What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, I want to first off thank everybody for watching my videos. I really appreciate the support. But on one of my recent videos about why I believe African Americans should better understand global affairs and foreign politics, there was some activity in the comment section, and of course there was comments around the video, people expressing their ideas, but there was also a section of the comment section really around my use of the term African American. There were some people that used the term foundational Black American, not the worst term in the world, sort of lofty, but not the worst term in the world. Some people say that Black. Uh, I think I might have got a few Indigenous Americans in there as well. Um, and of course, I prefer, as I said in the video, I think it all depends on the individual. I think these are all just labels. All just labels first and foremost, right? Just labels. Now, I think you need to use the label that ever, if you look like this, or close to this, of my kin, use the label that gets you out of bed in the morning and be the best version of yourself you can possibly be to help build our community. That's all I really want at the end of the day. And whatever is so capacity that requires, for me, it is simple. I am an American of African descent, or African America, if you will, and I don't like the term black. I find that to be reason why I really don't like to use this word. I use it, of course, for brevity or relatability. But the reason why I'm not a big fan of it is because it is a color. As the great Honorable Dr. John Harry Clark says, it tells you how you look, it doesn't tell you who you are. And my history, and a lot of this, I know some of this deals with our history and its country and its slavery, enslavement. I've never been a person that looked down on my ancestors. In fact, I have a great degree of appreciation for the endurance that they had, the will they had, the power that came from the inside to not only survive the brutality of slavery, but also to have hope, to have future generations to survive, to live in this country. And because there's no shame there, I think that's why I don't necessarily run from this term. I know exactly where my ancestors come from. I did the DNA test and everything. I'm African as you can get. Various degrees. My DNA map looks like a history book. It looks like a confluence of African people from sub-Saharan Africa that were brought to the United States. And I have a historical background. My grandparents are from the South, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama. There's nothing really an outlier. It's no outlier in my family tree. It is exactly how the history books said. I can trace that lineage directly. And so I never ran from this term. I feel as though at one point we were. I speak for myself in this regard. And you can let it, if it don't apply, let it fly, as we used to say. My ancestors, a long time ago, centuries and centuries and centuries ago, lived on the African continent. And through captivity and enslavement, they were sold to slave traders and brought to the United States, from which we endured years and years. My ancestors endured years and years and years, depending on when they got here, centuries and centuries of slavery. And then from that, Reconstruction, they migrated for economic opportunity, and lo and behold, I arrived here today. Now, to me, that's obvious. It's nothing that I just said that I find to be egregious. And some people say, well, what about white people? White people, like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an African. I have no problem calling Elon Musk an African or formerly an African. The reason why, because I do split this on three lines: nationality, culture, ethnicity, right? Nationality, where were you born? I'm an American. Of course I'm an American. I'm born in this country. I speak like American. That bleeds right over into culture. My culture is distinct within America, though. The African American story is distinct within America. We do not have a migrant story. We didn't come through San Francisco to work on railroads. We didn't come from Latin America to find employment as part of our families back home. We didn't come through Ellis Island in search of a new land or a newfound wealth. My ancestors came off slave ships. And our story here has been how we have developed in the background of this, being taken from where we were taken from, and then growing up in this system that we never volunteered for. But conversely, one of the only systems we know, because relatively speaking, we did not rebel it. We did not reject America. And I think that has to be charged to us to some degree. Like, I always see us as we are a guest in this country. I think African Americans were basically grandfathered in, and like, as the clause would say, we were grandfathered in. 14th Amendment. That's like, hey, they here, all right, let them be here. You know, of course, some of us left and traveled, but all this to say, we were great victims of a crime, and we need to. And I believe because of this, it has made us a powerful voice in the world that we have nowhere near come to our potential. And conversely, I can say the same things about Europeans with Africa. I have no gripe with European and Africa, because I know just as long as Africans have been in Americans, there have been Europeans in Africa, in particularly South Africa. I can't look at an African that has culturally and from a national point of view and a cultural point of view spent their entire lives in Africa and say because 2 centuries ago your ancestors spoke Dutch, you're not African. And I think this is a way deeper conversation, and that's why I think so much is overblown as Americans. And this is why I said we need to understand global affairs a lot better. When we look at South Africa, especially modern day South Africa, we want to transpose our issues to other parts of the world, and it's not the same. The whites that live in South Africa post 1994, they grew up in a different South Africa than pre 1994. Don't forget, South Africa is one of the most developed nations in Africa. How do you think they got that way? Being on the southern tip of Africa, right? Trade, global integration, and how did they do that? Being part of global commerce. And how did that happen? They were a key strategic point between Europe and Asia. That is just an inherent fact. Now, beyond that, there are some things that country probably needs to iron out when you have 7% of the population, only 70% of the asset producing land. Yeah, and that's a South African issues, and God speed to them. But I can't go there and tell white people in South Africa they don't belong there. That's absurd. That's ludicrous. Same reason somebody else can't come to America from any country and tell an African American they don't belong here. We were brought here through great effort, I mind you. And I think all these things come together when you think how I think, because I think it's all connected. I think globally, I think comprehensively, I think community minded, because I recognize the plight of my ancestors from the great continent of Africa. And my position, my blessed position, I mind you, you will not find 40 million Africans in this world living to the high degree which we have today in America. For better and for worse, we have great opportunity. We have great success stories. We also have great tragedies. I'm not saying it's perfect. In fact, it's far from it. But what I am saying is that a rising tide lifts all boats, and America has allowed a lot of opportunity for us as descendants of slaves to benefit from. And some of us has capitalized on it. Now, some of us, those of us who I would assume see themselves as black, has not put anything back into the pot. And that is the problem. And I think the reason why is because we do not all recognize our responsibility to each other and into the world. There are everyday opportunities, relationships, business linkages that have gone unmet by our community. because we are unaware of them. But they have not gone unnoticed by other communities, which is why you see Marco Rubio going down to Guyana and Suriname and Jamaica, because America knows the value of these places. But when the last time it has an African American sent businessman there? Have you seen African American businessmen there? Or them send their businessman to our South, the South of the United States, where we are heavily populated and need of economic progress. Our brothers suffer a lot of poverty in many states in America. And it goes unnoticed. Now, because of that, because we have dropped the ball, I believe, collectively to each other people have been able to brand us. And this is, and you can see the rising tide of degeneracy is taking over our culture. And you can't say that don't run hand in hand with somebody calling you a color, describing you like a pot, like an object. You are a person. Not only do you have a history, a purpose, intention, but you also have opportunity and obligation. And that I do not think you can have when you remove the heritage, the ethnic portion of the piece of the puzzle, when you remove that heritage from your identity. Going back to Dr. John, the great Honorable Dr. John Henry Clarke, when you talk about somebody and you reference it, it's your talk. When you know who they are, you immediately understand land, language, culture. When people know I'm an African American, they know exactly where I'm from. They know the language I speak, and they know the entrapments of my culture, if not the tradition. So those are my thoughts. I'm really interested to hear your comments. Obviously, you guys got a lot to say about this, but this all comes back to my view of the world and how I see myself of that world. A member of a nation in a nation. I can't give the solutions for I think my community needs to other communities, and I don't expect that solution to work on us. And the problem is, the worst thing we can do is to subsidize ourselves, to make ourselves a subsegment of the broader American umbrella. No, we have endured a great misjustice historically. Now, I'm not saying that as far as reparations. I really, that word, that's another word to grind my gears, as they say. I'm not saying this in terms of reparation, but I'm saying is very few people on this planet have seen what we have seen from a historical point of view and lived to tell tales about it. And what comes with that, with our newfound freedom that our ancestors didn't have, but through the law and technology, we owe it to people of similar ilk. No, we owe it to everyone, to oppressors and the oppressed, to express our voice in a developing manner. Something that's going to help people be better, do better, understand each other better. We can be that great voice because we don't have blood on our hands like others do. And I think that is a great opportunity and an obligation, at minimum responsibility. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.